All right, we're back for another Peak Human episode. How's it going, everyone? I'm Brian Sanders. I'm making the Food Lie 6-part series. I'm the host of the Peak Human podcast. I'm the owner of nosetotale.org and the owner of the Sapien Center here in Austin. A lot of great stuff going on, all to do with ancestral health, all with helping you become the best version of yourself, live like a human again. So go back and listen to all the old episodes of this podcast. It's more than a podcast. It is an audio series. It is a free education on diet, lifestyle, and regenerative agriculture. Share with family and friends. Give it a review on iTunes or any podcast app. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for going to nosetotale.org, getting all the good regenerative meat. We do the best practices. We're here in Texas. It's just for family farms. Just these ranchers that do the good practices. And we get it straight out to you. All 48 states, we get you the good meat, the best meat. Our most popular product is the primal ground beef. We do versions of bison, lamb, chicken, pork as well, with the organ meats mixed in. This is the best way to get your organs in your diet. You don't taste it. You get all the good nutrition without all the hassle of cutting up organ meats or sourcing them, or any of that. You just have it ground up in the meat. It's nature's multivitamin. You get all of the vitamins and minerals that we used to get as ancient humans and that we've lost. I think it's super important to eat these at least once a week. Get these nutrients back in your diet. Feel amazing. Get your hormones functioning properly. Get your metabolism working. Get all of those nutrient levels correct. Go to nosetotale.org. Order some of that today. Build a box. We get it straight to you, straight to your door. We also have other products like body care. You want that animal-based body care on your skin with essential oils. No fake fragrances, no weird oils, nothing else. Just good stuff for your skin. Skin food, our most popular product on the skincare side of things. It is moisturizer. It soaks up into your skin. It is food for your skin. It is what your body wants. Check that out. Biltong, of course, meat on the go, South African. No sugar, no curing agents. Such good stuff. Grab a couple bags, plus our seasonings. Throw those in the box. We have free shipping options on those dry goods. So check that out. nosetotale.org. Thanks for your support. Thanks for supporting our family ranchers. And now the show with Miki Bendor. This guy is awesome. He's in Tel Aviv. He's got a PhD. He's been studying meat eating and human diets forever. I've had him on the show back in the day. People love that episode. We finally got a chance to do another one. He's released another study since then, and he's released his book. His book is great. You can listen to today's episode, learn all about how humans used to live, how we used to be healthy. This is all the stuff I'm talking about, the ancestral health, the stuff we do at the Sapien Center. We are getting people together in person to live this lifestyle. Miki was super excited about the Sapien Center. He didn't know about it, and we're going to try to get him here. We talked after the show about him coming to Austin in late June. Talked to Bill Schindler about this as well. We're going to see if we can make it happen. A lot of moving parts, so we'll see what we can do. Now, a little bit more about Miki. Miki Bendor has a PhD in archaeology, affiliated with the Department of Archaeology of Tel Aviv University. This is basically equivalent to paleoanthropology here in the US. He researches the connection between human evolution and nutrition throughout human prehistory. He's awesome. He's the man. We'll link to his studies in the show notes. He did one with 25 lines of evidence about humans' high meat diet throughout history, how we are high trophic level carnivores, that we evolved to eat tons of meat. And we also evolved together in tribes. We had purpose, we had community, we lived a much different lifestyle. And that's what he talks about today in this podcast and in his new book called Live Paleo Style. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. I think a lot of people really will resonate with this message. And once again, support Nose to Tail. Go to nosetotale.org, put in an order, go to sapien.org, get on the newsletter, and please enjoy this podcast with Miki Bendor. All right. Hello, Miki Bendor. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great. We're on for round 2. We did our last show 4 years ago. I just looked it up. It was in 2019. And are
Wow.
you calling in from Tel Aviv? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm still in Tel Aviv.
Awesome. So you got a PhD in archaeology, but mostly studied paleoanthropology. I guess that's what the degree would be if you got it in the US.
Right, that's what they call it in the US. In Israel, it's archaeology,
But yeah, you
prehistoric,
didn't dig.
prehistoric archaeology.
Historic archaeology. Yes, you weren't digging around. You were studying more of pre-human diets and early human diets and
Yeah,
lifestyles.
I was digging, papers most of the time, actually. And so, get sort of integrate and sort out information and trying to come up with explanations.
Well, you've done a lot. You've done a lot, and you published a paper since then. I think in the first show we were talking about it, and that you had a preprint of it.
Yeah, it took some time to get published. It was eventually published in 21. And our meeting was on the
2019.
2019. So what happened? And I put it in I submitted it, and then they decided that they want to put it in the yearbook because they liked the paper so much. So I
Oh,
had to wait for another year for the yearbook to appear. So and that's why it just came out on 2021. But since then, I got like a notice from them just a few days ago. This is the most cited paper for 21 and 22
mm.
in their journal. Yes,
Well, that's very cool. It's called The Evolution of the Human Trophic Level During the Pleistocene. I
right.
see. Oh, you got my buddy Raphael Sertoli on. I
Yeah,
met
I
him.
needed a biologist because most of the evidence came actually from biology. This is really was my contribution to paleoanthropology is to tell them that their science is not the place to look for the answer.
Mm,
It has very limited ability to provide the answer of the trophic level of humans. Trophic level is a position of an animal in the food chain.
mhm.
So how high it is, was it a carnivore or omnivore? This is really what level of carnivory human had. And archaeology and paleoanthropology are this is not what the answer is. The answer is in the human body, mostly. There are also evidence that you can pull out of archaeology, but a large part of the answer is in the body. So I needed a biologist with me, and Rafael Sitoli, I appreciate his work and his knowledge very much. So I asked him to join me.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it is all about that human physiology and biology. There's so much to it. Yeah, I met Raphael at a conference a couple years ago, and I think we're gonna tease this. We're gonna tease your paper a little bit because we want to jump in your book. I just finished reading it about 3 minutes before we jumped on air, or I should say, listening to it on 2x speed. So thanks for sending that, sort of a preprint, and it's called "Live Paleo Style."
Right.
And it's great because I was expecting it to be a diet book, but it was, say, it's 80% a lifestyle book and kind of painting a picture of how we lived in the past. And then at the end, you did all the diet stuff, which is great and awesome. And we're going to talk about all of that. And then that's when we'll jump in to your paper on the trophic level that showed how much meat eating humans did throughout history. But yeah, let's start with the fun stuff, the more lifestyle stuff. I'll just throw this in because I don't think you know this. I'm in Austin now. I have a ancestral health center. I have a in-person location called the Sapien Center, obviously referencing Homo sapiens,
Right.
and we live this lifestyle. This is the book of my people here.
No
we
kidding.
we live this stuff daily. Like the whole point of it is to have a physical location for us to get
That's great.
together and
Yeah.
live like humans used to live. And we people go barefoot. They're working with no shirt on out in the sun. They're doing sauna.
Unbelievable. Oh, that's great. Oh,
Yeah, and people are just grilling meat. We have a fire. We have a fire pit. This is in the middle of Austin, but we have a fire pit in the sand. I made a sand pit.
wow.
So I'm
Wow.
not trying to advertise it. I'm just trying to tell you that this is what we're doing over here. We're living this lifestyle.
I write in the book, if you remember, about Epicurus,
Yeah. Heck.
the Greek philosopher.
Oh yeah.
Uh, he's got a bad name, but really he was one of the greatest philosophers. I think the The church didn't like his popularity, so they started to stick all kind of stuff to him. But he left his work when he was a teacher, so he left his work when he was like 34 or something, and he got himself with friends a farm not far away from Athens, where they actually could live according simple simplicity was the order, and friendship, and all kind of philosophizing. Uh, so yes, that reminds me, of what you're doing there. It sounds like something
Yeah.
similar.
Well, it's the next version. Yeah, Epicurean is a word people may know that's from Epicure. Yeah. So
Right, right.
there's a lot of people in Austin with this idea of to go even more into what you're saying and
Right.
actually.
Actually, what happened in the Greek, in the Hellenistic world, is that many farms like that were were hundreds of years after he died.
Mm,
Still, you could find Epicurean farms,
well,
and
I think
that
that's.
lived according to his this lifestyle.
Oh, it makes sense because that's how humans are meant to live. And what I was going to say is in Austin, there's a lot of people, or just around the world, that are wanting to move kind of off grid and get out of society, especially in the last 3 years with all the COVID stuff.
Right.
People in Austin, they're like, all right, when are we going to get land? We're going to move out. We're going to get our people together. But it's not like a cult thing, or I don't know. It's a whole different thing because usually it's like this weird, like plant-based cults thing and it falls apart and everyone well, it just doesn't work. I'll say that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the book talks about the principles, and the first principle that the hunter-gatherers used is autonomy.
Hmm.
They respect the autonomy. They respect the equality and autonomy. So now you must ask, okay, how could it be that with a small group you can actually maintain autonomy and equality? But this is what they did, and the way to do it is just not to tell anybody what to do. Whatever, unless of course he's harming somebody, but as long as he behaves normally, and you just let people be what they want to be. If they want to go barefooted, God, bless them. As long as they don't throw their shoes at you, they just put them aside and they
Yeah.
walk barefooted, fine. So yeah, uh, as long as you maintain autonomy, and this is the problem with cults. Cults don't have autonomy. Cults have
Mhm.
leader, a strong leader. Uh, Hunter-gatherers don't have leaders. There were no leaders. The, there's a funny story. I think it's in the book about an Indian group in India, the Nayaka, and they were made to to sit in one place, to be stationary, because governments don't like normal people. They can't control them.
You
So they
can't
let
tax
them,
them. It's hard.
yeah, tax. They couldn't tax these guys.
Well, they have nothing to
But
tax. Maybe. Yeah.
yeah, there was nothing to tax there. But
Mhm.
they just wanted to to see them around, to see what they're doing. So they gave them a piece of land, and they said, "This is where you live," and they built them some kind of houses, and they said, that they told them, who asked them who's the leader, and they said, "We don't know what the leader means." So they just appointed somebody, and then they told him, "Look, after a while, yeah, they told him, we are bringing some stuff for the buildings, and we have to move it from the road to your place. Make sure everybody's waiting when we come at this and that date." When they came, it was only him. He just could not tell his friends or his members, other members, to come. It's not his. He just could not. They don't tell their children what to do. The children, the government asked them to go to school. Those that wanted to go to school went to school. Don't they didn't go want? The parents never told them what to do,
Wow.
how to go to school. So as long as you keep leaders out of the way, and let people have equality and autonomy, you can go and you can live and can have good life.
I love to look into the hunter gatherer lifestyle as well, and I've always read about them having a very egalitarian type of system where everyone was pretty equal, even the women, separate duties maybe, but very equal. But then they may have had sort of some sort of leader, an elder per se, but they maybe weren't the leader in the same sense that we think of as a leader.
No, look, naturally, the older people had more experience. You know that hunter-gatherers get to the top of their ability when they're about 40. And until 20 years old, they don't even manage to hunt enough calories to sustain themselves.
Mm,
So there is a very large group of people out of the group, maybe 40% or whatever, that actually don't have the same amount of knowledge that the elder have. Of course, there is respect for the elders, no question about it. But when they're going to make a move, or let's say a big decision on when to move, etc., they consult each other. It's never like the leader says, "Okay, tomorrow we move." So yeah, there is respect for elders because elders have more knowledge.
yeah. Well, just in general, people make decisions together. People will say though that that only works if you're in bands of, maybe 50 people or 15 to 50 people. How does it work? How did it work throughout history? Did they just have these multi uh, bands that were next to each other and sort of coordinated or not
Yeah,
coordinated?
yeah, of course. There were bands. You know, it's funny, but the size of a band uh, was never decided. I mean, there's no consensus on that, and it's very difficult to know from the archaeological uh, assemblages of stones and bones how many people were there. Uh, my personal feeling is that the number was much higher when the animals were larger,
Mm,
and and this is what happens with other carnivores like lions. When they hunt larger animal, there are larger groups naturally because there is enough food for everybody. So when they hunted the elephants, I don't know the size of today's group or recent groups was what 25 or so, but it could have been 100. When they used to hunt elephants, we really don't know.
that's a good point because we don't know a lot, and we're going to talk about that stuff because I still am so curious about. Do we know what all the plant flora and fauna like? Was there food? Was there a lot of plant food? Was there not? Like Ice Age. Maybe yeah. Let's just jump there. Let's go there. Like people, sometimes you think of the Ice Age and it's just like the whole world was covered in ice. That wasn't the case. I mean, the ice. I mean, it was coming down more towards the equator, but I recently learned that early humans moved up while the ice was coming down south. They were still continuing to move north.
Yeah, it's all it depends on the amount of ice. For instance, in England, in the British Isle, uh, there are periods where there are humans, and there are periods when there are no humans, depending on the ice cover.
Hmm.
So of course, if there is ice, only ice, people cannot live on ice. But if it's cold, sometimes it can be even better because large animals have advantage in cold conditions because the relative surface of their body to their weight is smaller, and and also they can feed on the lower quality uh, food, so they can actually go through the snow and get some whatever is there, and they still can survive on it. So in periods of ice age, there were herds of elephants in the north of Europe, for example, and if humans followed them, they could live on it. So, but there was never snow in Africa. I mean,
Hmm.
that's for sure. So yes, it was drier through ice age in icy periods, glacial periods actually they called.
Hmm.
It was drier most of the time in Africa, but again in dry conditions, large animals again have advantage because they can eat low quality food. They use and they also they're more efficient in the movement relative to their weight. So they spend less energy relative to their weight, of course.
Hmm.
So they are even in dry conditions, relatively speaking, you find more large animals and fatter animals because they lose less fat during dry periods.
Mm. Well, yeah. When we first talked 4 years ago, we talked all about how humans were very good hunters and we sought after these large, fatty animals, especially woolly mammoth, these ancient elephants that were like 3 times the size of modern ones. And this is what humans did for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, I can say almost 2 million years.
2 million years. And we were good at it. And that really shapes our history. It's like, what other species of animal doesn't have their diet shaped by what they've eaten for the entire history, right? Yet somehow we have this idea that we should be eating like seed oils and boxed cereal.
They call it the paleo diet, but I call it natural diet. Every animal has a natural diet that it has adapted to eat. And they don't eat other diets. They eat what they adapted to. We are adapted to eat meat and some tubers, etc. I don't want to say 100% meat, but certainly if we have to eat 100% meat, we can do it for sure, no problem. But this is the diet that it is natural to us.
It makes sense. And I'll still push off the diet stuff because I want to get into like all of that evidence. But maybe we'll finish up the plant versus animal stuff because as you get closer to the equator, there were more plant foods available. Even despite being an ice age. So, what do you have like a good picture? Is this in the literature? Right, it's so hard to know like what we ate, what was available.
Look, on the what, there's almost no argument. They ate everything that was, edible. The question is how much.
Hmm.
This is the question that you just cannot get from digging archaeological sites. First of all, because plant remains don't preserve as well as bones, and also, even if you did find the plant remains, still there was no point in trying to assess the relative quantity because people eat not only on that site. They go out and they eat on their way outside of the camp. There's no way to tell. So what people did until now is what Laurent Corday did. He took the most recent groups and the reports on the most recent groups and assessed what was the portion of the plants and animals. And what they found out is that there are a very wide range.
Hmm.
So some eat 20% meat and others eat 100% meat. Uh, and that's how they decided that this is what humans ate during the last or the previous 2 million years. But this is nonsense because the the situation with the megafauna, the what was called the late quaternary megafauna extinction, so many species disappeared of large animals. disappeared, that did change the whole picture. And also the fact that they were not on the land changed the vegetation very much. So they also the technology that the current hunter-gatherers had is completely different to the technology. Most of the time, out of the 2 million years, 1.7 million years, there were no stone tips. Stone, you just had the wooden spear to hunt with. They didn't use any arrows. Bows and arrows is a new invention. The first one is recognized maybe 60,000 years ago. So any analogy between hunter-gatherers today or recent hunter-gatherers and hunter-gatherers that at the time when, according to some estimates, elephant forms more than 50% of the biomass of herbivores. So, today, it's not even anywhere near that. And the hunters today don't hunt elephants at all. There are no elephants to speak of in their territory. Their territory don't look like a savanna. I was there like 2 years ago, or even less, a year and a half ago. It doesn't look like a savanna. It's full of thorny bush. That's what it is. And this is not a typical environment for hunter-gatherers, prehistoric hunter-gatherers. They don't let them to go on the savannah because they bring the tourists there. And they don't want them to kill the animals. So they stay in areas where previously they wouldn't have stayed. What happens is when the elephants are not there, you have trees, like a baobab tree that grow, and they wouldn't have grown in elephant kill trees. An elephant can kill 1,600 trees a year. And elephants actually create a savanna. So now they have the baobab tree, and if you look at the diet, about 30% of it come from the baobab tree in the form of fruit, and the bees and the honey, they eat a lot of honey. But that honey comes from bees that reside on top of these baobab trees. So if the baobab trees was not around, they wouldn't have the bees, they wouldn't have the honey. So the conditions is completely different. And so that's why I think this is my, I would say, most important contribution is to stop trying to reconstruct exactly how much plants and how much meat. It's impossible. What is possible is to try to find the trophic level. The trophic level, human or any animal, adjusts to a certain trophic level. And so if an animal eats plants, it's about 2. This is the trophic level. Animals that eat plants are 3, and animals that eat predators are 4, etc. So it's clear that humans were between 2 and 3. They were omnivores. They were eating plants, and they were eating meat. But were they 2.9 or 2.1? This is the question, really. And the paper says, and this is why I think it was easier for me to get the evidence, is because I just look at the trophic level and could compare it to the trophic level of other animals. So, for instance, if you take the acidity, stomach acidity. So our stomach acidity is a stomach acidity of scavengers. Carnivores have a very high stomach acidity because they have to deal with the pathogens. Scavengers have an even higher stomach acidity because they have more pathogens because the meat stay longer. And herbivores and plant eaters have a low level of acidity because there are no pathogens. So humans are actually scavengers in the level of acidity, and the authors of this paper, which are not paleoanthropologists, say, oh, humans were scavengers, but humans were not scavengers. Or they were scavengers, but that was not the main form of acquisition. Humans were actually hunters that brought the cut the animal to pieces and brought the pieces to a central site. And they could sit on it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and if it's an elephant, for a month, and eat it. So they were like making like a special type of scavenger. And that's why they needed the acidity of a scavenger. Now, that doesn't tell me exactly what was the trophic level. But again, and there are other things. If you want to, we can go into one
Yeah.
of
We
into
should go
the
to all of them. We should go to all of them. I have it open in your book because you put this paper and you put a data table into the book that's from
right.
the builder that has all the lines of evidence. And this is so important because yes, we can't just look at recent hunter gatherers and know what we ate. We have to look at all these hard morphology. It's called right the actual
Yeah,
physical
yeah.
characteristics.
What we evolved because we need to first of all acquire the food, we need to prepare the food, and we need to assimilate the food. So, and all these activities leave marks, and the assimilation part happens inside the body. So, are we adapted to assimilate meat, fat, or are we adapted to assimilate more plants? Uh, and it's quite clear from the evidence that we are more adapted or specialized actually in assimilating meat and fat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And now that's interesting because you before I understood the scavenging part is like our earliest ancestors relied on scavenging, and that's why this acidity
True.
developed, which is very expensive, by the way. You make this point. It's to have a highly acidic stomach, that is very expensive metabolically, and it does not happen by accident. This is a
Absolutely.
very necessary thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is why you don't find it just in scavengers, very, very high acidity. We have a pH of 1.5. It's water is 7. So water is like not acid and not basic. And we have 1.5, which is very, very high acidity. And the lining cells in the stomach have to be replaced like every 4 days, if I remember correctly, just to cope with that kind of acidity.
Yep. And I like that further explanation you gave of that because we would drag these giant animals back and that it was quote rotting. If you leave an elephant around for a month, it is sort of rotting, and that's what these pathogens are you're telling us about that need to be digested safely.
Right, right. Yeah, we ate raw food and we ate putrid food. Uh, yeah, because of the acidity, we could afford to do that.
So another big thing that people need to know is okay, you said the biomass of elephants. That means like how many the entire weight of like animals on earth and in the old times there was over 50% of
No, I
elephant
didn't say all the animals. I just said the herbivores.
of the herbivores. Yeah.
Because human hunted herbivores.
Uh-huh.
Herbivores are the animals that eat the eat the grass or the leaves, and they turn it into meat and fat.
It's
This is
beautiful.
what they do for
That's
us.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what mostly what human hunted,
Uh-huh.
and,
And
and and in some areas in Africa, this is the estimate. I mean, it's not today. By the way, today, in some of the uh, in some of the reserves in Africa, actually elephants form 80% of the biomass.
mm,
Yeah. I mean, and this is, by the way, because they don't let people hunt elephants.
yeah.
The elephants are such a successful animal that if you don't kill him, like say, you don't limit it from the top, they call it. Yeah, it will overproduce.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so there's two big parts of this story. One is the lion's share of human history when we had giant animals, giant herbivores, woolly mammoth, elephants that we could hunt, and that was the bulk of human existence. Then those disappeared, and there's multiple theories of why over hunting or some sort of younger dryas impact, that could have wiped out a lot of these big species of megafauna. And then there's a
Right.
completely new part of history. Well, there's really three. Then there's agricultural revolution, right? Most people know like 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, we started doing agriculture. I did tons of podcasts on this, got shorter, got less robust, brains got smaller, more disease, all this stuff. And then there's even this more recent time in history that we're studying these hunter gatherers that is nothing like what they lived through in the past, which is they are pushed out of the land. All the good animals are put on reservations where the government makes money selling passes to tourists, right? Safari reserves,
Right.
and they
Right.
have nothing. And I visited the Hadza 2 years ago. So if you went a year and a half ago, I went 2 years ago and got to see this firsthand. And
Yeah,
yes, it's
near
completely
Lake
different.
Yassi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely different though. Not a savanna, not that no good animals. These guys were trying to hunt like baboons and like tiny little bush babies. Like it was
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like the past.
They were hunting birds when I was there. The
Yep.
kids were hunting birds. That's it. No, and you see the what do you call it in English? I'm not sure, but the all the cow shit on the
Mm-hmm.
ground,
Mm-hmm.
which means is that actually what happens is that their neighbors, which are cow herders, invade their territory, and whatever grass there is in the territory, they consume it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't leave much grass for other animals. So the other animals are very rare in their environment.
It's true. The Totoga tribe, and the Maasai. The Maasai people have heard of, and they're the herders. But the Totoga as well. We spent some time with the Totoga, and they do the
Right, they
animal
are
herding.
herders. They are the Toga
Yeah,
herders. Yeah,
yeah.
some
So,
of them are. Yeah, some of them are farmers, but
well, they do a little of both, but yes, they all have animals. They have like goats and cows, and they
right,
make like the tool tips for people. So the Hadza trade for those
right.
tool tips. So now
Well,
they have
here's
some metal.
another point. I mean, like eh, going back, what 12,000 years, there was no iron. So you had to spend a lot of time going around and making tools, stone tools, and maintain the tools all the time because the sharp edge was corroding very quickly.
Hmm.
Now they have this iron, so they changed their ways completely. The availability of iron is a massive, massive revolution for them.
It's so
You
interesting.
just cannot compare these people to the people that use stones.
Not at all. Just oh my gosh, millions of years where all we had was the sharpened wood. That is
Yeah,
so telling of what we had to go after compared to even
right.
the stone tools, and then even super recently is the metal tools. And the Hadza don't make the metal. This is the Datoga specialty. Is they figured out how to blacksmith.
Yeah, right.
Very recent.
Yeah, yeah. But they were the Toga were there. I think about 500 years ago. So already 500 years they have iron, access to iron. By the way, I don't know if you know that, but most of the Hadza speak two languages.
Hmm.
So that's how they are connected. I mean, like they're just not the pristine hunter gatherers that everyone think.
Well, we visited two groups of Hadza, and one was completely different because they were contacting tourists every day. Right.
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 They were
Well,
getting money. Yeah, I bought a bow and arrow from them.
well, the one group, but they're getting like candy and treats and like snacks all day, and their teeth are messed up, and they didn't look. They're not like as healthy, and like the younger guys who I guess this guy was the kind of leader. He was eating all kinds of treats. Like I guess he was somewhat of a leader in the more American sense, and was taking all the treats for himself. And he like had the worst teeth and had the worst health. It looked like, and some of the older guys they didn't want, like, we noticed they're like, they didn't want all the little candies, and like they seem to be doing better.
Look, it's, really, I mean, that's nice. And I'm going myself and I'm reading a lot about the Hadza and I'm writing a lot about the Hadza. As you know from the book, they appear in the book a lot of times. And there are many things that we can learn from them. The only thing we cannot learn from them is the trophic level that we evolved in. This is a quantitative element there that we just cannot learn. We cannot. We can, for instance, learn from them about sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So they share their large pieces of food. They share. If they hunt a bird, they don't share the bird. But if they hunt a large animal or a decent sized animal, they will share it. So yeah, you can say that sharing, and you see the sharing, by the way, it's like common in all hunter-gatherer societies, nomad hunter-gatherer societies. Okay, they are different from stationary hunter-gatherer societies. But nomad hunter-gatherer societies share, all of them. So you can say, okay, regardless of the ecological conditions, you find the same thing in all hunter-gatherers, so it makes sense that this was also common. It's coming with the territory, right? So yeah, you can assume that prehistoric hunter-gatherers also shared.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot take something that's quantitative and it changes, and you see that like Reconnecting showed, it changes is in one ecological situation, it is 20% meat. In another, it's 100% meat.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way you can tell from that. The other thing that you cannot tell, and this is also something that is like something that has to be rethought, is the flexibility. In other words, they say, okay, humans are so smart. They're so smart that they can be flexible, and they will just, whatever the ecological situation, they will either get plants or animals. And this is, by the way, why nobody wrote about trophic level, because they thought that people were so smart. They didn't really have a trophic level. They were like, actually, there is a very prominent paleontologist from Washington, Richard Potts, it's called, and he said that the human brain evolved because we needed that flexibility. Now, the problem with the flexibility is that under natural condition, not the one that we have today, but the natural condition, or even recent hunter-gatherers, if we take recent hunter-gatherers, the energetic return on plants is 1/10 of the energetic return on animals.
Mm-hmm.
And people just don't have energy to spare. Mm-hmm. They need to optimize their energy. Because as I told you before, hunter-gatherers reach their peak ability at the age of 40, and they don't even manage to get enough calories for themselves hunting with a high return until the age of 20. So there's a large group of people in the group that need to be supported. So you don't hunt only for yourself, you hunt for the group. You have to hunt even more than double of what you need. So we just can't afford. Now, of course, why there are plants? There are plants mainly, in my opinion, and we find plants in archaeological sites and we find it in teeth. There's no question that people ate plants. But I think that the plants, first of all, there are seasons where plants are so plenty you just can't ignore them, like berries. But they're short. Wheat in nature, the whole field folds in one day. That's how they are, built. Now, unless you can collect them and store them, There's no way you can consume a lot. You'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 days until other animals go and get their share. So there's not much left. So you cannot consume it over a long time. So people did consume plants, and I suppose that part of the women who were also collecting plants because they could not hunt. They have to watch the children. By the way, women did hunt, did participate in hunting. There's no question about it. But some of them probably couldn't hunt, so they took the kid on the back and went collecting food, even if the return is 1/10 of the return on hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not flexible. You just can't say, okay, you know what? And this is the main proof for that is the transition to agriculture. Once we were forced to use plants as a major component, we had to grow it to achieve the abundance, and then of course increase the return much higher.
That's actually a good point. I never kind of thought it that way. It's like that kind of proves that we couldn't be supporting ourselves on them before that because we needed so much of them and we had to plant them in such giant fields just to try to get enough calories.
Yeah, there are no stone tools, for instance, that are specific for plants exploitation until the end of the Stone Age. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, 50, also 20 something thousand years ago, which is less than 1% of human evolution.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any tools that were specific. We like grinding, which is a basic preparation action.
Yeah. Well, so what you're talking about is the optimal foraging theory. That's kind of like the formal way it's written in research papers. That means we need to get enough energy return for our investment of time of gathering it. And then hunting, like you said, 10 times more, getting animal foods, even collecting, animal foods. You could collect, shelled oysters or clams or something by the shore, and you would get such a higher return than trying to collect a bunch of plant foods. And we did see this in the Hudson. So we did visit the second group as well. That wasn't the more touristy group. The second group was more isolated, and yeah, of course, they're just after animals. All they cared about was getting animals. And then we did visit with some of the women, and for one thing, amazing teeth. There was this girl, some teenage girl, like specifically perfect teeth, wide jaw, the whole thing. We can get into some Weston Price stuff. Amazing. This girl lived on a wood. She lived in a stick hut on the ground and had the best teeth I've ever seen. And so they were eating some tubers. So that, yes, they did try to rely on some tubers, especially because they have no good hunting grounds anymore. But they baked them, right? So they put them on the fire, and I got to eat them. So they were eating these all day. They were just sitting around, hanging out with the kids, the women just hanging out, chewing these tubers. They were not eating the tube. It was not like a sweet potato, not at all. It was the most fibrous thing of all time that they had to cook to try to even get to be edible. And then once it was cooked, you just got a little bit of sugar, basically. It was just a little bit of glucose that you could chew on, and then you spit out all the fiber. I did not eat a single gram of food, right? I did not swallow any food. I swallowed a bit of glucose, basically. And so I just wanted to push back on this idea that we ate hundreds of grams of fiber per day. And I think this is mischaracterized in the literature. I don't know what's going on. I think these modern scientists...
that's a big BS. That's a big BS.
Okay, I know you know that because I saw it firsthand. They're like, oh, look at this giant tuber. That's like 800 grams of fiber, and they split it up between 8 people. Okay, 100 grams a day. No, 0. I got 0 fiber. 0.
No, that the stomach, if you compare not the stomach, but the gut, if you compare the columns of humans and chimpanzees, right? Our colon is like 77% smaller than that of a chimpanzee. So really, the colon is where the fiber get digested by bacteria, right? This is how animals exploit fiber. No animal has the enzymes to get glucose out of fiber. Fiber is carbohydrates, but very, very complex carbohydrates. So we cannot get them. We have to let the bacteria get it. Now the bacteria need the space. So so they need large colon, or they need like 4 stomachs of a cow or whatever to get the fermentation going. By the way, whose byproduct is fats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most animals
Yep.
consume fats, and
Mm-hmm.
most of the energy in nature actually is stored in the form of fiber. All the leaves, all the
Grasses.
the grasses, the stems, everything is fiber. The fruits that chimpanzee eat, they're full of fiber. The researchers that follow them in Uganda tried to eat them, the fruits, they just ripe fruit, by the way, and they just could not. It was too much fiber. So unless you are capable of exploiting the fiber, there's no way you can base your meat, your nutrition on plants. And this is, by the way, if you look at agriculture, agriculture is one big enterprise to get rid of fiber.
Hmm.
All the seeds, right? If you take a wheat or rice, it's quite easy to get rid of the fiber of this. You just have to put it in the wind and beat it a little bit, and you get rid of the fiber, and you are left with the starch. These are the sort of foods that humans uh, domesticated. The foods that allow them to get rid of the fiber. The fruits, for instance, the fruits of chimpanzees contain about 34% fiber, and the fruit that we consume contain about 10%.
Hmm.
So that was the domestication. Domestication was towards the removal of fiber.
Yeah.
So if you see, actually humans evolved away from plants, away from which means, and by the way, at the time that the colon went, decreased in size by 77%, the small intestines got longer by something like 60%. And the intestines is where the protein and fat are absorbed. So everywhere you look, you see that humans evolved away from our ability to exploit plants to make us good at exploiting and absorbing and assimilating protein
Animal.
and fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird how the modern world just completely misses this. And they're just trying to push us to the plant-based products. I get it, because that's where they make all the money. All the corporations, all our systems are based on making money off of these processed plant foods, and maybe even the ill health that results of that. If people eat the highly refined foods, then all of a sudden you have this
Yeah,
big pharmaceutical.
I don't like this
Well, no.
theory
Listen, I
that
don't mean to
people
debase
actually
that.
sit in an office
No, no, no,
somewhere
no, no.
high in the top floor of a building and say, okay, let's make people that sick.
No.
I don't
That's
think
not what
so.
I meant. I meant that it's well, first the food switch happened, but it's just that it kept going down this path, and there was so much money that it just keeps snowballing, and people just prefer these highly processed foods. And yes, it's sort of this sad accident that happened, and it just keeps on perpetuating. But it's just driven by money, right? I'm not saying that. Yeah, there's like.
Look, the cheapest components of the industrialized food is what? Seed oil, sugar, and flour.
Yep.
And you find it in most of the industrialized food. So yes, they make money on it. They paint it, they put nice packaging and they sell it to you.
No, it all makes sense. And yes,
every egg that they manage to convince you that eggs are dangerous for your health,
mm,
then you start to buy cereals. So every egg every paper that comes out, shitty paper that comes out and tell you that eggs are not unhealthy. So in the beginning there was a cholesterol in the eggs that caused them to be unhealthy. I don't know what they use now, but of course they don't care about your health, not at all. That's for
no,
sure.
no, not at all. People just need to know that it's not that they're like trying to make people sick. Really, it's just that they'd have there's no monetary reason why they should care. They want to make foods that taste good. It makes complete sense. But
Yeah, look, they are, they like it when they are doing good. So now they get this environmental stuff, uh, global warming and all stuff. So now they have another point, that they can exploit.
I
But yeah.
I mean, I'm pushing back on all of that. Exactly. I do presentations on this stuff and like trying to connect the dots that this stuff is just a big smokescreen. It's this big propaganda campaign for them to shift the blame away from their highly processed foods to, well, these ancestral foods that they don't make money on.
But Brian, before we blame them, there are quite a few scientists. I forgot the guy's name in Harvard. I think he's in Harvard or Taft. I think he's in Harvard.
Which one? Mostafarian? Darius?
Yeah, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy.
Yeah.
And he studies, and he's convinced, and he's talking from on every stage that he can find
Mm-hmm.
that the seed oil is the best stuff that ever happened to humans.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So, and whole grain and all that bullshit. So, you can't blame the industry. They get the information that they want, and they use it.
Well, who's he funded by? I mean, isn't this public knowledge?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
He might have these beliefs, though. He might have some of the beliefs.
I believe in his authenticity. He believes what he said.
Yeah.
Excuse me, if I say so, he's a poor scientist, in my opinion, that relies so much on observational studies, like it's sickening. But, he still, I think he believes what he's saying.
No, I get it. I think he does. I mean, there are vegetarian. I get it. I've met a lot of these people. They believe what they're saying. They have been convinced that for whatever reason why, that they have this ideological view that it's bad to eat animals, that fruits and vegetables are healthy. What is it religious? Is it moral? I get it. They believe it. And yes, then there's a bunch of epidemiology, like you said, observational research that has been done for whoever's funding it to kind of show that, maybe there is some sort of benefit here if you do this. Again,
By the way, most of the observational studies was done with the support of the American government.
Yeah.
So by Harvard.
Harvard, for sure.
Yeah.
Harvard,
so you cannot blame the industry for that.
Well, yeah, but I just think they're all in cahoots, and even if it's just like they're even just pushing that, even just pushing that direction, right? So I was going to say this guy Darius Mostafarian or whatever, how do you say his name? He may have this ideological view that he grew up with, whatever, and then it's like, oh well, yeah, Harvard, or like, oh well, they're just sponsored by this company or this study, but he still believes it. I mean, maybe it just leans in that direction, right? Maybe it's not guiding his views, but unconsciously it's guiding his bias.
Look, like you have in politics, I mean, now we have a very boiling period here in Israel. And I can see, two groups looking at the same facts and drawing the opposite conclusions.
Yeah.
I mean, humans have unbelievable capacity to ignore evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they come to two different conclusions.
Yeah. It's kind of
And
human nature to
for
cherry
me,
pick.
for me, it's incomprehensible that the guy like Muzaffarian sitting in Harvard and ignoring evolutionary evidence and all the evolutionary way of thinking. This is terrible. But, that's what I think allows him to hold this kind of views.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. If humans by nature like to just support their own opinion and their bias and cherry pick, and then I get it. I don't think he like is secretly a carnivore and he's just like out to
No.
No, I get it. Like there's certain people that go down these paths and really believe what they believe, but that's sort of a different story. But anyway, I wanted to go back to the speaking of Harvard, Herman Ponzer, maybe one of these guys that studied the Hadza. I talked to him on the phone, had a really bad conversation with him years ago.
Yeah, Ponzer is now he's not in Harvard. He's in
Oh,
South Carolina.
okay,
In
good. Anyway, the whole Harvard thing is just a big mess. The Harvard Public School of Health is just a big joke in my opinion. But Herman Bonser is like part of these people that try to show, oh, the Hadza eat 100 grams of fiber per day, all that stuff. What do you think is going on there? Like, he seems to be just super biased in his idea. He was like, I'm not going to be in your film. I don't know why you guys are trying to tell people what to eat. We already know what to eat. We just need to eat whole grains and low meat and mostly fruit and vegetables. And that's it. That's how we be healthy. And that's what he believes. He's like, just eat high fiber, low meat. And it's just like, it's crazy. That's just what he believes in. And so that's what he sees. He goes over to Africa, studies the Hadza, and then do you think that just like completely influenced the way where we got this idea that they were eating hundreds of grams?
Yeah, he spent a lot of time in the Hadza. He liked the Hadza. I know him personally quite well. I mean, not that well, but I know him. And I've talked to him, and I've organized like a session with him in a meeting in Denver. I think it was like 2 years ago in March or something like that. No, 1 or 2 years. I don't remember. Anyway, and of course I tried to talk to him about it, but he's completely immersed in the Hadza. He got his claim to fame, and by the way, he is considered now one of the major scientists in the field. And he's good. He's good. He's smart.
It was good. Well, the burn,
but you won't.
The calorie burn stuff is good. Sorry to interrupt, but the calorie burn and expenditure stuff is good. And that's a whole nother thing that he wrote the paper. He wrote a book called Burn, and he found that energy expenditure.
He's smart, no question about it. He's very good.
Yeah.
And actually, he solved a big problem for me in my PhD because I had like a model, and I had a problem with the model because the solution to the problem was that people will just consume more or run further, run a little bit more. So they spend 4,000 calories. So what? I mean, I had a problem with the model. So because I wanted to say that it was impossible and that the decline in prey size made people spend more energy on hunting smaller animals. So if they were not limited in the amount of energy that they could spend, I had a problem with the model. All of a sudden, I came across his research where he found out that people actually cannot spend on a chronic basis more than 2,500 calories a day. I mean, they can have days of 7,000 calories, but if they have too many days of 7,000 calories, and this is, by the way, what happens to the riders in the Tour de France. Yeah, they all become sick after that. Because what happens, and that's his theory, and I think he's absolutely right. the body takes the energy from the energy that he used for maintaining the body. So instead of creating, let's say, immune bodies, it doesn't do that because it needs the energy to walk. Okay. Excuse me.
You're taking away your immune function by trying to cycle up a hill.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm really an admirer of Herman Ponzer, but he's stuck with the Hadza. He won't listen to anything he thinks that he can do and take analogy. By the way, he just published another paper, again brilliant, in Science magazine. And the paper he argues that human evolved to high return, high risk strategy instead of low return, low risk energetic strategy. So what is that? So he writes the strategy is hunting gathering. That's the strategy. Now it just shows, how stuck these people are. The gathering is not a high return, high risk strategy. The hunting is the high return, high risk strategy. But it's still, instead of, actually, what he found out is that human moved to carnivore. But he wouldn't say that. He's writing hunting and gathering. Yeah. Actually, the high risk. I'm deciding between myself whether to write a paper about it. The high risk, high return strategy is right. He is right in that as well. And he came to that conclusion from studying energetic patterns of human behavior, energetic return in various situations. But he wouldn't say the hunting alone. Actually, that's what made us human. We were gathering plants for God knows how many millions of years. What made human is the hunting. This is what we added to the arsenal, right? Not the gathering. The gathering, we were gathering. People got off the trees maybe 6 million years ago. And the genus Homo appears about 2.5 million years ago. And there is an argument whether the first one was a Homo or not, the Homo habilis, whether it was actually Homo habilis. But anyway, even if you take the Homo habilis, it's 2.5, so they were like maybe 3.5 million years where we did mostly gathering. And we look like chimpanzee walking.
Yep.
Upright. Upright chimpanzees. That's what we look like.
Yeah.
The Homo, the difference is that we stopped, or we reduced the gathering, and we started the hunting. And this is what he found out, but he wouldn't call it in its name.
It's crazy. And we know from all the body morphology stuff that we're talking about, and we can keep talking about, is our bodies changed because we started eating animal protein and fat. And it's like, it did not change to digest fiber. It did the exact opposite. What you're talking about with the small intestine getting larger or bigger, longer, and the large intestine, the colon, getting smaller. This is direct evidence. So we don't have to theorize. We don't have to go back and guess what we ate. We know what we ate by the body changes.
By the way, if we go back to the book, actually the behavior, okay, and the emotional evolution that we sort of went through was also dictated by the fact that we were hunters. Yeah. So the equality, for instance, if you look at the chimpanzees group, there's no equality. There are, castes, right? Mm-hmm. There are the alpha male and etc. and goes down the line. But if you look at let's say wolves, There are much more equality in wolves than in chimpanzees. And so humans had to actually become carnivores also in their behavior. Sharing, by the way, sharing is a phenomena that almost exclusive to predators, to carnivores.
Sharing is caring. Yeah.
Uh, the fact that all the group actually care for the kids. So if you were with the Hadza, you could see that, right? I mean, when I was there was like two babies, and they everybody wanted to take them and keep them and hold them and kiss them, uh, but that doesn't happen with with the other with non-predators. Very
Carnivore. Yeah.
rarely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all kind of typical uh, human psyche and behavior is there because we were carnivores.
That's super interesting. Uh, I want to go on to this more like sociological stuff, or what you're talking about is like the social dynamics of being human, and it's a lot of that's in your book. It's super cool. But to wrap up with Herman Bonzer, all the stuff we talked about before about how the Hadza have to live in these marginalized conditions and lands, that is what he's studying. He's studying the very, 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 very modern version that have no resources, no big animals, and now he's trying to base all these conclusions about how we lived through history on that. And it's absolutely insane. It makes no sense. And right?
Yeah,
It's like,
it's analogy. I mean, the old archaeologists of the previous of prehistory or the period of the transition, they were like a very famous archaeologists in the 60s. And they came to the conclusion, and they already wrote about it, that if you want to make analogies, and archaeologists and paleoanthropologists need to make analogies because they don't see what happened today. They can see other groups and try to make analogies. So they investigated when an analogy is an analogy. And the first two conditions are that the ecology is analogical, and the second one is the technology is equal or similar. And these two conditions are not fulfilled with the Hadza. So there's no way to use the Hadza as a model for nutrition. What he can say, and this is true, by the way, is that they were healthy with a smaller consumption of meat, 30% meat, and tubers and these baobab fruits, they were healthy. The same goes for the sun, which consume 20-30% meat, and the rest is mogongo nuts and other things, but mainly mogongo nuts. And they were healthy. So, by the way, the same thing can be said about the early 19th or mid 19th century people in England. There are paper that mid-Victorian people in England were quite healthy. The same can be said of people in America at the beginning of the 20th century. They didn't know what heart attacks were. So you're right. He's right in a way that we don't have to go that far back
to find healthier versions of
to
us.
be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck with it, because we don't know what went wrong. That's the problem, and so many things changed that we can't even follow them. For instance, legumes. Yeah, legumes need a lot of preparation. They need soaking. They need sprouting. they they have a lot of toxins.
Mm-hmm.
But who's doing it today? Nobody.
Yeah.
So so and some people got adapted, let's say, to some kind of food, like Japanese, for instance, probably got adapted to, I don't know, to what do they eat? Their tofu. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. If you eat that for last 500 years, all your family and kids and grandson and that eat tofu. At the end of the process, you will be adapted to eat tofu. The problem happens when you move to the States and you eat other foods. So, so this is why, by the way, the blue zones are the blue zones, because they are mostly uh, sort of, they have their traditional foods, and people get adjusted to traditional foods after a while. The only problem is that we now have industrialized food, and we don't have the 500 years to get used to them, to get adapted to them. So the safest way, in my opinion, is just to go back to meat. I don't know how can I get other foods, and what should I do, to get the toxins out of other foods, out of plants. So just safer and simpler to get meat. I mean, but surely if you go back to if the Japanese go back to Japan and live on traditional food, they'll probably be healthy.
Well, you're making a great point, because my idea is that all these different cultures you mentioned, and different, the Hadza or the San, and like it doesn't matter that much. We can have like this, we'll call it 90%. I'm just going to make up a number, 90% health by doing that. Any version of a whole foods diet with animal foods, you can have 20% meat to 100% meat, like you said, and you could be doing great. We'll call it 90%. You're eating whole foods found in nature. You're getting your animal source protein, vitamins, minerals. Great. Right. So we're saying, even if you were in modern America in 1900, you didn't have chronic cardiovascular disease. We were doing fine. Great. And so that explains a lot. And that's why I don't subscribe to any certain diet, because I understand that humans are omnivores, although some might say specialized carnivores because of our digestive system, but we can eat different versions of plant foods. But there's kind of like the three eras of history that we need to look at, where the by far the longest, whatever, 99%, depends on how you characterize it, 95 to 99% of human history, we were in the pre-agriculture, like just high animal food, fat and protein. We just did not have the same food sources at all. And we were thriving, robust, super healthy, just amazing creatures. Then there was the agriculture period that we can extend all the way up to, say, 1930. And yes, we were doing great. We didn't have chronic disease like we do today. We can survive. We were surviving in amazing ways. And then we're talking about like the really recent 1930, you could say 1980, when the real uptick in obesity and disease happened, when it's just a big mess. Everyone knows that. We're eating the hyper processed foods. Like, it's just a whole new ball game. And so, yes, you can go back. So now any human can just go back 100 years into the agriculture era and do great. And yes, you can get healthy, and you can have any number of diets like Whole30 or pescatarian or paleo, whatever modern version of paleo, and do great because you're going back. But you're kind of saying, you just go back to the earliest diet, and you're more certain that you can do well on is this
Yeah.
like real
Look,
ancestral diet.
I give you an example. For instance, bread. Okay, so people ate bread 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So why not bread? Eat bread. The problem is that the bread that they ate 100 years ago is not the bread that we are eating today.
Yeah.
The bread that was raised or fermented for about 12 hours. And the 12 hours, and the species of wheat didn't have that much gluten in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the raising of the bread during the fermentation, right, about most of the gluten get eaten by the bacteria. This is why when you go to France and you eat the baguette, you see the big holes in the baguette. And that's why it gets dry very quickly, because it is raised for 12 hours. Today, the industrial production of bread, you have the machines that do it 1 hour from flour to bread. That's the slogan. Okay? Yeah, sure, you can do 1 hour, but it's not the same bread. So I don't eat bread in America, but I eat baguette from time to time.
I love that. And I've done many podcasts on this with Dr. Bill Schindler. He's great. He
Right,
studies all this stuff. He's just obsessed with these processing
right.
techniques. Yeah, you're talking about the beans, the legumes. Yeah, these lectins, you have to pressure cook them. There's so many ways that humans had to develop throughout history to detoxify these plants and make them safer and easier to eat, and we're not doing them today. But even if we were doing them, it's still not ideal, right? It's even if we
Right. I think Bill Schindler, yeah, he's doing a great work, great work. And of course, the whole world cannot fit on meat. So
Mhm.
I don't claim that this is like a solution for everybody.
Uh-huh.
But why should I bother about, how to remove the toxins and what percentage of the toxins do I remove? And another point, am I genetically adapted? Because we are genetically adapted and unadapted to many things. For instance, in the Andes, okay, the people in the Andes that feed a lot on tubers, they have special adaptations to the consumption of tubers. There are things that miss anti-nutrients in the tuber that they are adapted to take care of, and
Mhm.
you know vitamins that are missing, and they are adapted to that situation. Now, I don't know what I'm adapted to.
Mm.
So, but I'm sure I'm adapted to eat meat.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. No, Bill Schindler did go to Peru. He spent time in the Andes, and they do extensive processing methods with the potatoes. They like
Yeah,
bury them for like a year, and they do all kinds of
right.
techniques.
In the maize, they do nixtamalization.
Nixtamalization. Yeah, and,
Yeah, nixtamalization. They put it together with the ash, I think.
yeah, and the lime. Yeah, the lime, and it
Right.
gets
Yeah.
and it makes the B vitamins become more bioavailable. And then even they did these extensive things with the potatoes and bury them and ferment them. And they eat it with the clay. That then the clay binds to some of these toxins. And
Right.
what is
Right.
that
Right.
called? The
Right.
clay.
Right.
There's this cool word for when you eat clay with your potatoes. I forget what it's called.
Yeah. So you can either be Bill Schindler and study all this area, or you just eat meat.
Well, yeah, no, we can talk about diets, and also I was hanging with Bill Schindler all weekend, so he's awesome. We were in Denver. He's gonna come to Austin soon, so he's cool.
Yeah, it's
We don't
cool.
have we don't
By
have
the
to
way,
only.
by the way, I asked Bill when I wrote this paper.
Mm.
I asked him if he can give me some evidence for this kind of preparations that he's talking about that took place during the Paleolithic. He couldn't.
Mm. Well, that's a
So
good point. This is a modern
yeah,
thing that
because
we've
you
had to
see,
do.
look at it. If you look at it, you need. I mean, soaking. I would say that you can do. You put it in the river or something in a stream, in some kind of net or something, and you can do some soaking. But the rest, you need containers, and there were no containers.
We didn't find any container. Good point. No,
Not,
that's
not to, for instance, to boil.
yeah.
I don't see how humans could boil large. I mean, the method for boiling is digging a hole in the ground, covering it with the hide, and then finding big stones, throw the stones in the fire, and when they heat up, you put it in the water. That's how you boil. And this is a lot of work because these stones break because they get hot and cold and hot and cold. So you need to get more stones. You can't use small stones, you have to get big stones. So you have to go further away to get the stones. That's apart from getting the wood for the fire. So it's just
Well,
impractical.
it makes it. It's like the equivalent is today. It's like if someone spent 3 hours making this insane pastry where you had to get 30 different ingredients and make like a fancy chef at like a $200 restaurant. You don't do that every day. This is a very very special occasion. It's very hard to do. No, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like if there's a special occasion or if there's a big reason, maybe you could do it. But if there's not a big reason to do it, I am not doing 3 hours to prepare my lunch today. I'm spending about 10 minutes, by the way. As soon as we get off this call, I can heat up some meat and like a little bit of sauerkraut and an avocado in like 2 seconds. So I know exactly what you mean. Like, this is not what ancient humans did. And I'm sure Bill will admit that. He's like, yes, these are traditional preparation techniques that we've used since agriculture.
Right, right. No, in that case, in that side, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, but that's what he's focused on. Is yeah, he understands that for most of human history, we were eating organs and fat and bone marrow and brains and all that stuff, and he loves talking about that stuff. But so with this diet stuff, I think we were talking about Saladino before we started recording, and he's eating meat and organs and all the nose to tail stuff, and then some fruit and honey. Some might say too much. I have no opinion. He looks healthy. He's doing fine. But I just know some people are triggered by him because he's eating so much fruit and honey. But he's also in Costa Rica surfing all day, and he's by the equator, and maybe he's doing fine, eating all that. I do not care at all. But I think it is a pretty evolutionary consistent diet because it doesn't involve all kinds of preparation techniques, right? We could eat meat, nose to tail animal foods plus some fruit and plus some honey without any technology.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Try to guess what percentage of calories you can get from fruit and still be healthy. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
just know that, of course, we came from monkeys who used to eat fruit. Okay, it was a little bit different fruit, less sugar, much more fiber. By the way, I calculated once that chimpanzees get 50% of their calories from fat. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, from the cell point of view, okay? From the mitochondria point of view, this is what flows into the mitochondria. 20% protein and only 30% from glucose.
Mm-hmm.
This is they were quite a good scientific data collection on their diet. So I wouldn't venture to say what is reasonable, what is unreasonable. Uh, I personally eat fruit from time to time, and I don't mind eating a little honey from time to time, but I don't do it like a major component of my diet. But maybe it's okay.
Well, no, I think it's almost like the proof's in the pudding. He's been doing well on this for a couple years now, and I think it is just about energy expenditure. It's like that's why I mentioned that he surfs a lot in Costa Rica, and he has the need, much less ability to eat more of this, fruit and honey. So it's fine.
Again, it's genetic. It could be genetic. It could
Yeah,
be that some people are more adapted to consume a higher level of carbohydrates
yeah.
than others.
Well, it's also what's your metabolic status? Most
Yeah,
people in
true,
America are metabolic unhealthy, and they need to fix their metabolism and eat less energy from carbs or fats,
true, true, true,
probably, right? So they need
true.
to like lose some of that body fat. Paul is not in that group. He
Yeah,
does
of
not need
course,
to
it
lose.
depends. What is your insulin sensitivity? Sure.
Yeah, but I just like it because it seems like very evolutionary consistent. Because like we've been talking about, you don't need all these technologies to eat animal foods, nose to tail, plus some fruit, plus some honey.
No, people ate honey and fruit all over, for 2 million years, 2.5, even more. You can say, I don't know, 40 million years, because if you take our ancestors that were like cousins of the chimpanzee, they most probably were eating fruits.
Yep.
So I don't think this is a strange, it's not something that we are not adapted to eat. But
Yeah.
the relative quantity, or how much, fructose, for instance, we can digest fructose to a certain extent, but I don't know if we can digest a lot of fructose. That I don't know.
Well, that's what we're saying here. It depends on your metabolic status. It depends on so many other things. So, yeah, we don't need to tell people the ratios they need to eat. We're just saying these are the evolutionary foods. Let's do a quick recap of all the different lines of evidence that we were high trophic level carnivores that consumed a lot of meat and animal fat. We talked about the colon, the large intestine. We talked about what else do we talk about? Stomach acidity. What are some of these other ones that you put in your book and that your 2021 paper is on?
Well, another one that I talk a lot about is the morphology of the fat cells,
Mm-hmm.
adipocytes in scientific language. And this is why, as I told you, it was very helpful to concentrate on trophic level and not on exactly what percentage of food, of plants or animal food you eat. At trophic level, what happens is that animals that are on a high trophic level, like carnivores, have many smaller fat cells. And omnivores, like monkeys, have less fat cells, but they are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So to hold the same amount of fat. So now you go to humans and you find out where humans stand, and they fall very nicely into the carnivore group. So there you have it. And the authors themselves write. And this means that humans were relying basically primarily on protein and fat.
Mm.
Another piece of evidence, for instance, is the weaning period. So humans tend to wean babies after about 2 years, and chimpanzees wean their babies after 5 years.
Mm.
So for 5 years, they're still breastfeeding them, partially, not fully. Uh, and humans fall into the carnivore pattern of short. Carnivores have short weaning, and if you think about it, it makes sense because they wean their babies to a food that contains protein and fat. So they don't have to change, and they don't have to have a gut that is too involved uh, compared to the gut that they were born with. But the chimpanzees actually change their food to a very uh, to a very fibrous food, right? So that's completely different than milk, than mother's milk. So it take them 5 years. Now that's why and the authors the same, right? Again, right? That this means that the human evolution was towards carnivory. Was a and
Do you have other ones as well? Yeah, let's keep going on these.
yeah, I mean, for instance, the insulin resistance, the fact that we all falls very quickly into a stage of insulin resistance. This is typical of carnivores, not of omnivores. Because omnivores are adapted to consume a lot of carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that we are not adapted to that high consumption of carbohydrates. Uh, The one that we discussed also when you made the recap is and to me, this is the most convincing one, is the energetic return.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just, there is no way that we could, under natural conditions, without agriculture, uh, obtain enough calories throughout the year. I'm not talking about, uh, 3 days of,
Hmm.
a lot of berries, or 1, 2, 3, 4 days, or even a month of, legumes, etc. But throughout the year, to rely on plants, we just, it wouldn't provide
Doesn't
us
make
enough
sense.
energy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, let's not do them all. So people can find the paper, The Evolution of the Human Trophic Level During the Pleistocene. You have 25 sources of evidence in total. I'll
Right.
link to that in the show notes. I want to spend the last few minutes just on your book because you really paint a picture of what it's like to live back then. And I think it's really cool. Like I said in the beginning, that's what we're trying to do here in Austin. Like we're trying to get this tribe of people that can live these values. And it's sort of a paradise. I think one of the chapter names in the beginning is called something about the paradise, right? This is how we used to live. And
Right, right,
like,
right. No,
yeah,
actually,
go for it.
the name in Hebrew and the book, actually, why the book? You said that the book has most of the 80% of it is on the emotional side, social side, and only 20% is about the nutrition. Is because that's the route that I followed.
Mm,
I started to write this book in Hebrew 12 years ago on the emotional side of things,
mm,
because I realized when I was a student that we are hunter-gatherers living in a modern environment. And the first thing that the first insight that I had was that my wife is much better at finding things in the fridge than I am,
mhm,
but I am better at navigating.
mm,
So I realized that that we have this hunter and gatherer things in actually in our genes.
mhm,
And so this was the reason I went to study hunter-gatherers. I wanted to understand their way of living in order to find out what we can do to make our lives here better, my personal life. And that's the reason actually that I retired one day when I
mm,
was 52, because I said to myself, just a minute, is it really natural for us to work? And going back to hunter gatherers, and at that time I already started uh, reading quite a lot about them. They actually didn't work in the sense that we call work. They didn't print the card in the morning. It didn't go for 8 hours, or maybe now 10, 12 hours, who knows. They didn't produce just a small portion of a product and didn't
mhm,
know what happened to it in the end. Whatever they did had a purpose, and they enjoyed the fruit of their efforts in a very short while. So their attention span was short, and the reward was short for work, and they were completely autonomous at when to go to hunt. For instance, by the way, hunters, it's funny, when they go hunting, they don't call their friends and say, let's go hunting. For instance, that would already be too much of intruding on their autonomy.
mm,
They just say, I am going hunting, and wait for a minute. And if somebody say, yeah, I'll come with you, fine. But if not, they just go. So they go whenever they want. It's not that whenever they want. Maybe sometimes they go when they don't feel like it, okay? But still, it is nothing like what we have in work today. There is no work today. Most of us work in very complex hierarchical systems. And the reason we need these complex hierarchical systems is because the economy is so complex. And to put together a car, you need God knows how many parts, yeah, that arrive from God knows how many places, and that you are dependent on the worker before you and the worker after you to get the car, assembled. So the whole system is very rigid, and you're doing a small part in it. Most people, I'm not saying that all people do that, but it's so completely different than the life of hunter gatherers that we are not well adapted to it, but we have to do it, and it causes a lot of problems. We have
Well, it's not
to
satisfying at all. It's not satisfying
no.
to be a cog
I,
in a machine.
I think the worst part is the hierarchy, really.
Mhm.
And I felt it when I was working. I was working in large organizations most of the time. You have to present a persona, a different persona to your boss, a different persona uh, to your peers, and a different persona to the people under you. And you're dependent on decisions of people that actually don't even know you. When you go to, I don't know, you ask for a passport or a driving license, okay, and you come to somebody and you need his approval, but he doesn't know who you are. Now, in hunter-gatherers societies, you don't really meet people who don't know who you are. Actually, you meet people who were living with you since your childhood. They're either older or younger than you, but still, since your childhood and since their childhood, you know them. They know you. There's no reason for you to put any persona. You can be completely authentic. There's no way that you can hide any weakness that you have. Everybody knows there's no privacy, by the way. All this thing of private, I think it's a little problem to be too private.
Mm.
Okay, you guard yourself and you don't let anybody into your world. God forbid they see something, they see a weakness. But really, what I proposed is that people actually expose their weaknesses in a way. Not to everybody they meet and not at every time, etc., etc. But to friends, yeah, if you want a good, true friendship, you have to expose your weaknesses because then you allow your friend to be authentic as well. He doesn't feel that he has to present, uh, a persona to you that is not correct. And I see it in day to day. I mean, when we meet men, they usually don't talk about their weaknesses, about things that bothers them too much. They all present like a perfect persona, and sometimes even perfect health, because they don't want to expose a weakness that may later on be used against them in a competitive world. We live in a competitive world that is putting a lot of pressure on us that we really are not built to withstand. So the book tried to describe what hunter-gatherers, the way that they lived, okay, which is the original book was called Sneaking into Paradise.
Mm.
And I changed the name, like because I sort of had this brain paleo style. But yeah, it was paradise because you just were not just you know you now know a little bit of it because you have this organization, the Sapien, and I'm sure that your friends, you know, don't don't work too much to present a persona to you.
Mm.
You meet them and you know them, and then you don't need them to be like who they are not. I think two most important characteristics of hunter-gatherers that we should strive to are autonomy and equality.
Hmm.
And of course, we cannot get at the same level of autonomy and equality that hunter-gatherers had, but we can, to some extent, uh, reach that. And by the way, it will help you also, I believe, and I have a an example here with my wife. This is how we try to treat each other. We are equal and we are autonomous. I cannot tell her what to do. I want to go to to somewhere, and she doesn't. God bless her. There's no way that I can say, yeah, but you need to do that because we are a couple, and then we need to do things together. Yeah, we will do things together if we like it, if we both like it, and we both want it. But look, my wife, for instance, she's a psychotherapist, and she works, and she doesn't want to leave her patients for a long time. And I like to travel, and I would have traveled for months on end, but I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, and I don't mess, and I don't mention it to her every day. That's it. That's life. She has a right to live her life, and I have a right to live mine. And so everybody must give up a little bit, but still maintain the autonomy of each of us and the equality of each of us. And the same, and it ties up also with the with this authenticity. Because once you're authentic, once you expose, authentics mean to me that you can expose your weaknesses. You don't have to wear a persona.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't wear a persona, your friends or your wife, whatever, also feel comfortable not wearing a persona. And then you get real friendship. And we humans are crazy about friendship. One of the chapters talk about meaning, yeah, and the whole book talk about retiring as a solution, as the entry to paradise. In other words, you don't have to really retire, but you have to not work 8 hours a day for 200 days a year. Maybe you're freelancer or something, and you can work a little bit less, and you're free to decide when and where. So it's like, for me, it means like a form of retirement. And when you retire, a lot of people actually lose the meaning because their meaning was their work. So they are all of a sudden find themselves empty. And it's not by chance that most people volunteer because we love to help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are just sick to help because groups of hunter-gatherers that people helped each other survived. And this is evolution. The groups that had people that were more reserved in helping others didn't survive. So this is when we get, if you want meaning, think about how you can help other people. It can be your family, it can be a group of other people, it can be the world, the human race, whatever. But you have to feel, and not only that, but you have to get committed. And commitment actually create meaning. If you're committed to something. And the way to get commitment is to start doing something. Sometimes you don't get commitment. You don't know. When I retired, by the way, I didn't know what I'm going to do. And then I found this subject, and I was writing this book. Like I said, I started with the emotional side of it. And then I decided to also write about nutrition. I knew about the paleo, and I started to research the subject for the book. And then what I found out is that the dietary guidelines are such a catastrophe. And now I got motivation to do things, to help,
Uh-huh.
because I thought I can help. I was the first one in Israel with the paleo. They brought paleo to Israel 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I opened the blog and I wrote in Hebrew because there was no material in Hebrew at all on the paleo. So I said, okay, that will be my mission at the time. And then I got sucked into this nutrition business because of I knew what catastrophe, what kind of price the world is paying for following these dietary guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so so I found meaning by finding a field where I can help.
That's awesome. Well, and you have been. You've helped so many people along the way, and writing these papers, writing this book. I
Yep.
think it's good. We kind of saved the book for the end and just did a high level thing because people need to read it themselves. I think it's better to just get a taste for it, and I highly
Yeah, I
endorse the
don't know
book.
if you, I don't know if you were, because you heard the book. I'm not sure that you saw exactly how it is built, but the book is built is in a little different way than other books that I know, in the sense that the summaries appeared at the beginning of the chapters,
Mm,
and there is a summary at the beginning of the book. So you can read the summary of the chapter, and if you're not interested in that particular chapter, you got the summary and you can go to the next chapter. But if you are interested, then you can go deeper and
mm,
read the full chapter.
yeah,
So I think in a way it's more adapted to our
short attention span.
way of
Our
consuming
modern world.
information.
No, I like that. No, it's great, and you brought up so many good points here at the end that I'm going to try to just recap really quick. As we mentioned the blue zones, and a lot of people know about the blue zones. I've covered it many times and sort of debunking it in a way. But what you're saying with the meaning and the sense of purpose and the community and all these other things that are so important, and that's why I think the blue zones show people that live longer. They were all eating some sort of animal foods. They were all eating whole foods, and they had sense of purpose and meaning and cooperation and all these things you're talking about. And that's why they live long. Yes, maybe they could have lived even longer if they had more animal nutrition in their diet. Or maybe they did because, they're flawed in the way that that guy Dan Buettner went to look at these cultures, right? Mary Ruddick, my friend, who I've had the show, went to Africa with, went around to these places. They're eating nothing but animal foods. This is crazy. Like she went to Ikaria.
Yeah,
She was in
yeah. No,
Ikaria, and
no,
yeah, they're
it's
eating
crazy. It's
like
crazy. In Sardinia, for instance, yeah, they're
yeah,
talking about the people that live 100 years old. The old people, all of them, are living in the mountains, and they all eat, goats and cheese and all that stuff.
they're eating
The
like
people in the
yeah,
cities, they
lamb.
don't live to 100.
Yeah, it's we could do a whole other podcast on that, but the point is, well, half of it that's he's wrong. They were eating like full lamb, like nose to tail, eating organs, eating fat, all that stuff. But also, just a big point you're making in most of your book is the community aspect and how humans lived and how we thrive, and that's exactly what we're doing. I don't need to plug this my Sapien Center because most people listening don't live in Austin, so I'm not trying to plug it. I'm trying to say this is great because there's pockets of people who are
But
living this
maybe,
way
maybe
that
you
you're
can do
talking.
maybe you can spread that sapient
We
centers around the
will.
world.
We will. If anyone's listening, we want to expand, and I'm going to make a Google sheet or a Google form, and you can say what country you're in, what city you're in around the U.S., and we'll see where we want to make the next one because it is amazing. It is all the stuff you talk about in the book. It is autonomy, equality, cooperation, people letting their guard down. You're talking about basically being vulnerable. You're talking about you don't have this fake exterior, and that's what we do. This is how people bond. It is completely different. This is why I moved out of Los Angeles. LA,
It's
terrible.
really exciting. I mean, I'm in the next time I'm in the States, I'm going to visit you.
You have to come. You can do a whole presentation. We'll have a whole event. You can meet everyone. But this is what people do. they're vulnerable. They're not putting up shields and walls and fake, masks
No,
and
it's
pretending.
absolutely. We discussed it. I don't know if it was already when we on air or off air. We discussed the Epicurean
Yeah, yeah,
villages,
that was on air.
the Epicurean sort of communities
Yep.
that lasted for many hundreds of years after Epicurus, and where people live in a farm. They live very simple, and his philosophy was, and I'm writing about it in the book, it was the three F's. So, friendship, freedom, and philosophizing. That's what and that's what they used to do. They used to be good friends. They used to be free. They didn't work. They didn't have a job. Nobody told them what to do in the
Hmm.
community and outside of the community because they were independent because they grew their own food. And they were philosophizing, sitting and talking about stuff. And that was his formula for, happy life.
It is. And I wrote down another thing is that we didn't have this desire to accumulate property. Too, I
Right.
think that's important. Like the people I know that I relate with, the people I know that I connect with, and we gather, they're not having fancy watches and fancy cars. These people show up to the Sapien Center, whatever, to events around town in shorts, t-shirts, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it is not about that. And also, um, I think there is this like kind of egalitarian thing going on. I take out the trap. I'm out there just working with everyone else. It's not like, oh, I'm the business owner. You guys got to do this, you got to do that. I'm there doing the work, painting things, taking out trash, cleaning up things. I'm just one of the people, and
I tell you,
that's
I
how it
didn't
should
know
be.
about this club, but this is, I think it's a great idea that it should be spread around.
Well,
And
let's
like a
make it happen.
movement, Sapien movement.
I had a group on Facebook called Sapien Movement for 5 years now, 6 years. I don't really look at it much, but no, we're making it happen. We're making it happen, and I have this film coming out that's now a 6-part series, and I think that's going to really spread the word around the world about this. It's nothing about my projects. I'm not saying my views of diet or my company knows a tail or anything like that, but hopefully it'll just kind of generally start the movement around the world that this is how we're supposed to eat and live.
This is great. I didn't know about this, but this is like a proof that the philosophy that in the book
Mm-hmm.
is working, and
It is
people see
working.
the need. And I'm writing in the book, in at the beginning, that the first thing that you need to know first thing is you need to know what it was, and you will find your own solutions once you know what how people what we evolved to be. Yeah, what is the real person that we evolved, and this is the innate. This is the genetics in the genetics uh, in our genes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you will find your own way to take care of the mismatch. And you
I
found a good way to do it. It's amazing.
Well, we're proving your entire book because that's how we're living, and it's unbelievable. I've never felt more fulfilled. It's completely different than living Los Angeles, just the opposite. And I can't tell you how healthy people are. People come to the spot, to the center, and they just don't believe it. Like these people are thriving. They are glowing. They are like a different type of human. And I've
I
made
don't believe it. You must. Is the film about this? I mean, do you
Well,
film
no, the
it?
film is about generally what to eat. We tell the entire story in 6 parts of human evolution to all the way to regenerative agriculture. The,
But did you take shots at the club? I don't know how you call it.
no, 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 it's not about that. I mean, maybe we'll do something else later about about how we can thrive and in community
I
and
think
all that
it
type of
was a program, a TV program. This kind of club.
It would so that could be the second thing we do, but for now we have this thing. It's set in stone. We've written it for 6 years. We filmed it for 6 years. Going to Africa was part of the film with the Hadza. That we've been all over interviewing all these people. Bill Schindler. We're interviewing all of the people that have done the research. Brianna Pobner, who dug up the bones with the mammoth bones with the cut marks on them. We're getting all the great researchers, the doctors that tell this whole story. So it's not about it's not about like my club. It's not about anything. We're going big. We're going to Netflix. We're going to make the biggest nutrition film ever made, and then after that, we will do whatever we want and make more content on the finer details.
Yeah, I think this Sapiens Club is an interesting idea that maybe should be, should get a program. I don't know how long, but it's a really for me it's the most interesting idea that I've heard for quite a while.
Well, you should visit, and let's talk off air about that, because yes, this is something that has like kind of been sort of my focus. Well, my focus is finishing the film, but also my focus is bringing together people in person with all the values of what you talk about in the book, the ancestral principles, all that. So we got to end it here. We went long.
Okay,
This was awesome. Thank you so much. Live Paleo Style is the book. Is it out yet?
it's out yet. It's out. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in other venues by going through my blog where I have the links. The blog is paleostyle.com. I don't know if you put links in your
Yep.
notes or something. Uh, so yeah, just go to Amazon, Miki Bendor or Living. Actually, there is a little problem with the name because the name on Amazon is Living Paleo
Mm.
Style, and the name of the book is Live Paleo
Mm.
Style. But
You
you'll
can
find.
find it. People will find it. I'll link them to it. Great talking to you, man. We covered so much. I
Yeah,
thought this was super interesting, and we'll try to get you here to Austin.
yeah, I will. I will. Now that I know about this Sapien Club, I will come. I will come very
All
soon.
right. Thanks. I'll see you.
See you. Take care.